Welcome to Rates and Barrels. It is Friday, May 2nd. Derek VanRiper, Eno Sarris here with you on this episode. We dig into some news and notes from around the league, including a surprising demotion of Jake Burger. We have Mike Trout and Chisholm back on the IL. We got some mailbag questions to get to, and we'll get you ready for some weekend waiver wire pickups. I don't think it's going to be quite as loaded as last weekend's group, but there's still 3 days worth of games that could shake things up if you got Sunday night pickups coming up in your league. So it's always fun to say that on a Friday and then watch the chaos happen over the course of the weekend series. You know, how's it going for you on this Friday?
I'm exhausted. I just barely made it. It has been a long, long week. It has been the longest of weeks. But my guy Matt Denowitz, who helped create Pitching Plus, is in town, so we'll hopefully figure out a couple things in Stuff Plus this weekend. We're wrongly scaling minor leaguers among minor leaguers, so we have to scale minor leaguers to the major leaguers, and that'll help make it more predictive and make you have a real understanding what that Stuff Plus is. Like, for example, Blake Tidwell is coming up this weekend. And if you look at the Stuff Plus numbers, I think I have on the sheet or what I'm looking at, it looks amazing. Like, you're like, oh, 137 Stuff Plus sweeper, 5 pitches above 100 Stuff Plus, like this guy's got everything it needs. Well, the 4 seam's 100 Stuff Plus and the sinker's 110. And this is compared to other AAA players, not to major leaguers. So I think he has some uncomfortable things in common with like a Will Warren, although the model likes his changeup more than likes Will Warren's. So maybe, there's always there's somewhere between Will Warren and Michael King. That's where Blake Tidwell is. He's in that group though, because he's a sinker sweeper guy and he has a 4-seam and changeup and a gyro slider, and it could all work, but it's not as good as the stuff numbers I'm looking at. I'm trying to mentally scale that down. So I'm excited, but I don't think this is I don't think you have to put $150 on them.
Yeah, a few guys that have debuted recently or will debut soon that are in the mix in the waiver segment later on in the show. Hope you and Matt get out for a beer or two. I think Alpine Inn was my preferred.
Well, that's actually on the schedule for today.
Yeah, you got to go. It's a good food. It's a good food spot. Like, they have a good wide menu, something for everyone. Pretty good beer. Nice laid back beer garden. Great spot.
Outdoors. It's up into the foothills. Yeah, it's great. We're going to also go to Giants game on Sunday and something called Post Rock on Sunday night. A Post Rock show, which I don't know what that means. Do they just make noises?
I don't know.
I think it is. I think it's just noise.
Now I'm curious to learn more about that on Monday. I mean, it sounds
all about it.
Much more like a regular Eno activity than
Like,
Call made me think, are you
little
okay?
league in there? Yeah, I'll do that again. That was fun.
No, they'd realize you got out without fighting last time, though. So if you go back in there, they're going to recognize you. Let's get to the news, though. Jake Burger optioned to AAA for a reset. And when I read the news and make assumptions, I make assumptions like, well, surely Jake Burger is chasing more pitches outside the strike zone, or surely Jake Burger is striking out at an alarming rate compared to his career norms, or surely Jake Burger is not making as much hard contact as we're used to. And actually, none of those things really seem to be the problem. Jake Burger is actually chasing outside the zone less than he has over the course of his career. He's got a 39.9% O-swing percentage of the season. Not that that's good, but it's a 41.2% mark for his career. He's always had an aggressive approach, 29.6% K rate. It's up a little, but 27.7% for his career. Okay, kind of what you expect. Last season, he did have an oblique injury in April. It slowed him down early. Once he returned from that, hit 253, 303 with a 464 slug, hit 26 homers from May 6th on last year. So this time last year, it was a slow start attributed to injury. This time around, I don't quite know what the problem is. And the plan is to bring him back relatively quickly. But what do you do in the interim if you're trying to rely on Jake Burger for some power in your corner infield spots?
I don't know. It's even hard for me to diagnose how long you should keep him. But because there is something wrong here in that Jake Burger's pull air percentage was right around 20% for 3 years in a row. And that was a little part of his breakout was going from 17% up to 20, 22%. 2023, his best season, he had a 22% pull error percentage. It's 12% right now. So there's something going on there. I'm trying to look at his heat maps. He's swinging at low pitches like he usually does, but he's trying to swing at some inside pitches. You'd think he could pull that in the air, but he's not. He's kind of inside outing them. So there's something maybe a little bit wrong with the shape of his swing, if not the speed of his swing. You can also see it in the pull percentage. His pull percentages generally was 45 to 50%, and this year it's 35%. So Jake Burger's just a fraction of an inch off, is I would say. You know, still hitting the ball hard, still has the same approach he ever did. I'll have to say, though, I always thought that this kind of a streak could be in him. It's never been my favorite type of player. And I think if I had to circle one number that makes me not love Jacob Burger as a player is the 15% swing strike rate this year, 16% career. It's just a lot of swing and miss, and it doesn't come with a good sense of the plate. So he's a guy who's kind of swinging from his heels, a little bit like a Robert Jr. or something. You know, it's like, you know, there's talent there, and he's like a underrated athlete in that he actually has decent sprint speed. But and I say actually because we all know why I say actually. he's kind of a big dude, but it's a kind of an all or nothing slugger type, and it doesn't come with the walks. So I think, you know, what you find is that these guys have really terrible streaks sometimes.
I think it's really hard for a player like Jake Burger with this skill set to thrive in a lineup where every single game matters. These players seem to do a lot better in rebuilding situations where you can just absorb the slump, let them work through it, get the heater right back a few weeks later when they start to click again. The Rangers just don't have the luxury of waiting around to figure it out. And the replacement's Blaine Crim, an interesting story out of their minor league system. I don't know if there's an actual like advisable pickup decision to be made there. I mean, this is a guy that hasn't debuted yet. Yeah, he's 27. Good plate skills in the minors, 20 plus homer power.
But once you do the age at level reduction on his WRC plus, it might actually be below average.
Yeah, I mean, the projections actually have some kind of wide-ranging numbers for him. I'm a little surprised there's not more agreement here. The bat actually comes in with an 87 WRC plus and a 291 WOBA. Zips comes in with a 106. But the bat is generally the hardest on rookies. Yeah, and Zips comes in with a 106 WRC plus 318 WOBA. So, take your high end, take your low end, kind of go to the middle. You're looking at what, like a 95-ish WRC plus and a 303, 305 WOBA, which is where Steamer and I think Oopsie kind of fall in that sort of range. I think this could be a good story. I don't know if there's an actual move outside of like AL only leagues, despite the upper level success.
Yeah, and I'm looking through their lineup tracker for Texas, and Burger was playing a decent amount of first base. So the only name that I want to throw on the heap that actually could play first base in his stead and could maybe land in a platoon with Krim is Dustin Harris. And Dustin Harris feels like maybe a name that you've heard on the pod for a while, and he has been around for a while, but he's only 25 in 2025. And Dustin Harris therefore has a little bit more projection left than Krim. He wasn't doing that great in AAA. Harris was before he got called up, and his AAA numbers in 2024 were below average. So I don't really have something where I'm like, this is why you should roster Dustin Harris over Blaine Crim, other than really age, maybe some speed there for Dustin Harris, some versatility that might give him the lineup even on days when he's not starting at first. And then a decent swinging strike rate that should produce a better strikeout rate than he's got. And maybe a chance that there's a good hitter here. But there is a problem in Texas that's a larger problem than this. This is the changers in O-swing percentage. And you've got Adolis Garcia fourth in adding chase percentage. And you can see that he's a guy who's kind of bounced around on chase percentage. His best year, he really reduced it, or at least in 2023, he really reduced it. He really reduced it kind of off of some of his prospect days. So he'd done some good work, but maybe true talent-wise, maybe this is sort of reverting, but you'll also see that Leody Taveras is on here and that Wyatt Langford is on here. And then you can see that the Rangers are chasing more than anybody else in baseball. And they used to be an average team in that regard just last year. So there are more guys chasing on here at a time when the zone is smaller, as we reported yesterday. It's just a weird combo. And it's hard to get out. I think, if I'm diagnosing this, I'm Dr. Nick, not Dr. Nicky Lopez, who is one of the droppers. I would say that they're pressing as a team. That's just, I know it's not a scientific diagnosis. It's not, they're having trouble against this pitch or that pitch or whatever. It just, I think that sometimes it can get around that, like you're pressing as a team. We can look at pitch type value and look at what Texas is doing on different pitches, and they're really hurting on fastballs, on four seam fastballs, but they just don't have a positive pitch type value on any pitch other than the sinker. So it's not like they're getting filled up with this and they're not doing this. It's just a general thing that seems to be catching of something's not right. In the approach, or maybe it's just everyone's butt's a little tight right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to always look at this next to overall swing rates too. That's the other component to think about. Adolis Garcia's never swung at as many pitches, period, as he has so far this season, up to 57.8%, by far a career high for him. First strike percentage now up to 71.7%. This is a bad overall trend, I think, for Garcia. Even Leody Taveras up to a 52.4% overall swing rate. He's usually in the high 40s, so he's up. So I think you're onto something as far as there. Could it be a combination of pressing, but also maybe having a philosophy, trying to be more aggressive, trying to do damage in certain situations, maybe earlier in counts? Is that something you could?
It's possible. They are number one in swing rate. So, the more you swing, the more you chase, all this stuff comes to the top. It's not, when you look at swing rate at the top, it's not obvious that it's a terrible thing to do, but I will say that Colorado is second in swing rate. Boston is third, and they have a 109 WRC plus, and the Athletics are fourth, and they have a 109 WRC plus. But I will say that generally, other than those two teams, the top 10 teams in swing percentage are below average by WRC plus. And if you go the other way and you take the bottom 10 teams in swing percentage, there are 5 teams that are above average. So I would, and 2 or 3 more, they're at 97. You know what I mean? Like there's not the worst team is the Pirates, who swing the least. So maybe there is we swing too little. And they're at 78 WRC plus, but everybody else at the bottom of the swing rate is above average or better, including the Mets, Phillies, Dodgers, Orioles, Yankees, Diamondbacks. Like, I don't know, man. Brewers up there, you take the swingers and it's Texas, Colorado, Boston Athletics. I get it. Miami, Cleveland, who lives on commanding the zone and contact. Toronto, who's trying to do contact but is being out-homered by everybody and losing games. The White Sox and the Angels and the Royals. Like, I'd rather, I know which side of this list I'd rather be on. If I was like going to be one of 10 and I didn't know which one, I'd rather take the list of least swinging teams.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. And looking at this leaderboard again, I mean, Corbin Carroll has the third greatest increase in O swing percentage. It is working for him so far. I mean, look at the results from Corbin Carroll. 9 homers already through 31 games, hitting .286 with a .349 OBP, a .609 slug. That'd be a career high as well. He's doing a ton of damage. It's come with a higher K rate than we've seen the last 2 seasons, up at 25.3%. But if that's the payoff, that increased aggression is good, right? I think it is a sliding scale or some kind of bell curve overall, where your aggression needs to be at the appropriate level. And
yeah,
I think with Corbin Carroll, he's tinkering a little bit with that.
And Corbin Carroll's pull air percentage is the best it's been. You just look at 16 percentage, 11% in 2022, 24% this year. And just like watching him, he looks a little different. It's he's like trying to, I don't know if I'm making faces. He's like, I don't know. Are you watching this here? No, he's like trying to get going faster, and he kind of like is a little bit more open, I think. And then he's kind of like trying to like come into the zone a little bit and trying to like, I don't know. It looks like he's trying to pull the ball in the air. Actually, it sort of looks like what he's trying to do, and it's working. So it's he has a certain level of power to. If he's on the top end of that, he's an MVP candidate. If he's on the bottom end of that, he's a 4 to 5 win player. So there's no problems here, but this could be the way to win some hardware.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that and seeing if we have any clear differences in terms of the stance for Carroll. Just looking to see depth in box. It's about the same as it's always been. Distance off plate, about the same as it's always been. Distance between feet is a little different. Not really that much more open or closed compared to the past.
Looks different though. It's a little bit about it's about how he's like gripping the bat and how he's like. He just looks a little bit more intense at the plate this year. It's like that's the word I'm looking for. It's very strange.
Hey, it's working for him so far.
Anybody who watches the Diamondbacks some more, get in the Discord and tell me if I'm crazy.
Well, let's get to some other news, though. Mike Trout placed on the IL with a bone bruise in his knee, and
inevitable.
It's just like when it's never going to end, right? I was going to ask you, when does it end?
Something?
Well, I think this is a surgically repaired knee. Right. And they're said the initial report, Ron Washington said there is no structural damage. It's anticipated Trout will be sidelined for a relatively short period. This is from the RotoWire player update, though no timeline has been announced. Like, oh, okay. So we really don't know. I look at the start to the season, 9 homers already. It looks a lot like what he was doing a year ago, running a little bit, not quite as much as last year. But last year, Trout popped 10 homers in 29 games to start the year and then was hurt. Popped 9 in 29 games to start this year. Now he's hurt again. Low average, lower OBP than we're accustomed to.
Team sucks.
36 Ks already this season in 121 plate appearances. So that's not like off the charts bad, but it's still in that higher end of who Mike Trout appears to be now. So I like the discount on Trout this draft season. And yeah, we all know this is part of the package, especially at this point in his career. But like, is he someone you're still holding on to until you have more information, at least in most leagues, because there is at least still power there, despite all the other warts you were alluding to?
Yeah, I just, the Angels there's not really any. I think you had in the rundown that their Pythagorean is even worse than their actual, which is 12 and 18.
Yeah, they're 10 and 20 by Pythagorean. They're 12 and 18 by reality. So, got that going for you, I guess.
Well, it's just like the team context isn't that like we need to rush him back out there, unless you're Ron Washington, of course. You're like, I would rather have Mike Trout than not have him. But the team context isn't that they're going to rush him out there to be competitive, and the player context is get this right, and get right. So I would hold him as long as I could, I guess. I would at least hold him for the next injury update. I think what I'm finding with these news is that like a lot of players like this caliber are worth holding for 1 week. And I know there's like the real change, like they really want to like, what do I do with this roster spot? But it's 1 week. And in 1 week, the news can go either way pretty quickly. Like I was saying about AJ Puck. We got the news from AJ Puck and he's more the 2-month problem, but it could have been the 2-week one where they're like, everything's fine. He's going to start throwing next week, So with Trout, it's like, you wait for one piece of injury news, I think.
Yeah, and I think who gets playing time as a result of Trout's absence. I mean, if Thursday night was any indication, maybe it's an easier path to let Travis d'Arnaud and Logan O'Hoppe be in the lineup at the same time. 1 catches, 1 DHs. They put Jorge Soler in right field.
That's the move.
That was the first move anyway.
They don't have anything better. What could they do? Rendon, Moncada are hurt. Nicky Lopez. Oh, good. JD Davis got DFA'd, so he's not even around. He can't came around anymore. Tim Anderson's not. I don't know. Call up? Did they call somebody up when they put him on the IL? Christian Moore.
That would be more exciting.
What would
no
Christian
pun intended.
Moore do? Christian Moore right now is striking out a little bit too much, but walking a ton, not really getting to the power the same way. But for a 22-year-old in Double-A, he's keeping his head above water. Still an interesting player that I think in the big leagues could like 240, 2020 or something. He might be Gelofian.
Oof. I think it's definitely got that high-end swing and miss concern because we're at 45 Double-A games now. Age appropriate, of course, but like a 28% K rate there. That's surprising that the projection systems don't spit out a higher K rate.
As good as Gelof, so maybe Gelofian with less speed.
Yeah, so I don't know if this is the thing that would push Christian Moore into the equation. I think maybe he's on more of a once he gets on a heater, then they'll call him up sort of timetable. But I was watching this Angels game last night. It was Angels-Tigers, and Jorge Soler almost had a 2-homer game. Javier Baez pulled one back from him. I can't believe how easy Javier Baez makes playing center field look for a guy that's been a shortstop his whole career. Like, and that's someone who I understand how the defensive spectrum works. I understand that playing center field is easier than playing shortstop, but you shouldn't look that good in center field that quickly. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't think that just to finish off the thought about them, it's like I don't think Nelson Rada's ready. I mean, he's 19. And it's not like he's killing it in down there either. So I don't see, and even with Christian Moore, like I don't think that I'd put a bunch of money on it. And with Javi Baez, I don't think I'd put a bunch of money on him either in waivers because the flaws are still there at the plate. And at 32, I don't trust a 377 batting average on balls in play for Javi Baez or 291 average. So. And I don't even trust that he'll steal that much. And then I don't trust that long-term Meadows or Yearling or any of these guys won't just come back and take the job back away from him. Meadows did some light throwing in the outfield on Friday, which means maybe something. And he's on the 60-day IL, which sounds terrible, but I think they put him on it to begin the season. So he could still be, on track to be back at the end of May.
Yeah, late May would be the earlier window for guys that were placed on the 60-day to begin the season. Baez, I popped up that O-swing chart on YouTube again because I noticed he's actually swinging less outside the zone, 39.4%. It's a nice improvement for him. It's about 5 percentage points off of last season. He's lived between 44 and 48.7% going back to 2021. Always, of course, has had that free swinging sort of approach. The surprising thing is that we're also seeing a drop in hard hit rate. So yeah, I don't know if the adjustments are necessarily going to make Baez stick.
And he's mostly just
a more interesting player.
Less. He's just mostly swinging less across the zone. It's not like he really improved his plate discipline. It's just he's just swinging at everything less.
Yeah, well, but that in some cases that is improving your play discipline. Like if you swing too much, then swinging less is improving your play discipline.
Yes.
But the projections for him, the most optimistic projection from him would be Zips 239, 283, 376. That doesn't play. Like there's a gap between value as can play all the important positions defensively in the big leagues, like real life player,
and who somebody I need to put in the lineup every night. Like you're not putting a guy with that line in the lineup every night if you have options.
I'm going to put that down as another cool story, though, seeing him play center field. Also got really frustrated watching Reed Detmers and watching Ron Washington and the Angels manage Reed Detmers in a situation where they could have gone to the bullpen, got a righty-righty matchup instead, but were content to let Reed Detmers struggle with fastball command and throw his 71-mile-an-hour curveball. Like my brain was breaking watching it because it just felt like they were just leaving him out there as some sort of weird punishment, even though it was a winnable game where they had viable options ready to go.
Yeah, I think there's more to this story. I think
there almost has to be.
Yeah, there's something going on here. And I always lean sort of towards the player, but it's not always the player. It's not always the player that's in the right. Maybe they've been asking him to do something that he just won't do. Maybe throwing more curveballs was the thing they asked him to do, and he's like, "Look," and they're like, So I don't know. I think there couldn't. This is like another Griffin Canning situation where like I just see him on the Mets next year, Detmers, and I might be interested.
I mean,
it seems like a guy that should throw 3 fastballs and the curveball and like throw the slider 35% of the time.
Be smart. If they made a change like that, I cannot figure out what their actual plans are as an organization. They're turning into the Rockies right before my eyes. I'm like, why do you do these things? These do not make sense. You're right, Reed Detmers. The turnaround will happen somewhere else. The Mets, the Rays, the Brewers.
And sometimes these fresh starts, I could say this, like, having seen my children go through Little League, like there are many managers out there that just sort of succumb to the last thing they saw, and kind of form an impression of a player based on something. These are emotional moments. You're in this game, you're trying to win it, and then the player does something you don't like. He does something you didn't ask him to do, or he executes poorly, and you are in this heightened emotion state. You remember it in a way that I think cements it. And then it's very hard then for the player to sort of get out past that, then the confirmation bias comes in. Everything they do after that, you're like, oh, I knew this guy sucked, and the player's like, I'm trying, man. Like I'm trying, So I think Detmer's still with a slider, 87, 88 mile an hour slider that he can command like that. He's going to get another job. It's just, there's nothing to do about it right now.
No, nothing actionable in the short term. And I thought Jose Fermin is pretty interesting. A guy I hadn't really seen much before. He was the right-hander other than Kenley Jansen, who was up ready for a matchup that could have been, a game-saving decision had they gone that route. Instead,
I believe, yeah,
Dylan Dingler, hit a mammoth home run
off of Detmers to make it 5 runs or whatever.
Yeah, to blow it open.
Yeah. I just wanted to. This is from the Discord, and I'm sorry I can't have Discord open during this. Otherwise I would give credit. Discord is a big sort of suck here on the RAM. But I do know that someone posted fastball stuff plus. I don't think it was qualified pitchers. It was all stuff. And was Fermin on there? I was pretty sure.
And it was TPH noob. I'm breaking the rules. I'm running it. They gave me a jumbo laptop though, so because of the production. So I think I can get away with running Discord while I record the pod.
TPH noob is a power user, and thank you for that. And was it for me? It was fastball stuff plus, and Fermin's on there.
Yeah, it was minimum 1 inning pitch, the best fastballs by Stuff Plus so far. Fermin, a 146.
There he is. 2 innings pitched. Fastball Stuff Plus does come online really fast. And I don't think I check real quick. It's not the situation where he throws. Well, he does throw the sinker more often, so that's going to actually improve his Fastball Stuff Plus. You know what I'm saying? He's a sinker guy who surprises a little bit on some level with the fastball, but that's why Adam Ottavino is second, and it's not because his fastball is amazing. It's because his sinker is amazing, if that makes any sense. But Jose Fermin up there with Mason Montgomery, still like Mason Montgomery. Jack Leiter, 5th as a starter. Yes. It's a good list. Yimi Garcia got the save last night, didn't he?
Yeah, because
he's the second.
Hoffman gets 2 innings a day before.
Yeah, he's just a really good pitcher though, Yimi Garcia. So if you're in saves and holds or if you're in a type of league where setup guys are held, I would hold Jimmy Garcia. Like Hoffman could get hurt. He had the bad medicals.
Absolutely.
I saw Jazz do this. It was so obviously oblique. And he like went on to hit a triple like after he heard it. And I was like, you should have taken him out of the game. And I'm surprised he was able to hit a triple with a hurt oblique, but I was not surprised to hear later that his oblique was hurt.
Yeah, so it's been a strange start to the season for Jazz. And obliques, we sort of assume a month. He'll be eligible to return, May 10th. But it's a 181, 304, 410 line now through 30 games. 6 steals, 7 homers, good power speed combo, 39 Ks in 125 plate appeases. All right,
swing strike on the higher end for him. Yeah,
I'm
but not O swing.
I'm a little perplexed by this. Like I famously said I was on Team Jazz over Jarren Duran as a possible early second round toss up. I think that came with the extra context of wouldn't actually take either one of these guys in this spot, but if I had to take one, I would take Jazz. And
if you revisited that, you would take Duran, right?
I think
Duran's striking out less and
better floor. Only 2 homers though.
Yeah, but he's healthy.
He's healthy right now. Yeah, the injury part of this is an easy flip that call now, but I'm wondering why I was so wrong about Jazz overall. Like a big part of what I believed in was that he was running a lot more after the Yankees traded for him, and I think that's mostly that part's held up. I'm just wondering why the rest of the profile hasn't come through the way we expected.
Yeah, it's a little weird to like return to the strikeout rate when he's been up now. Like don't look at strikeout rate and look at swing strike rate. There's been some fluctuation. 12.5% in his first full season for Jazz Chisholm, 13.7 in his second, 15.2 for Jazz in his third, 12.6 last year. So you're like, he's improving, right? Like he found what he had. Like that's the story we had, which was like he's in a new park. He's got his old hitting coach back. He's found what he's had. You can look at his pull percentage, and there has been some up and down in the pull percentage as well. I think if you've ever spent an entire season swinging and missing 15% of the time, you have this volatility in you. And I think that there's just something about his approach that maybe his contact moves around a little bit, his timing moves around, and it's just not always on point. And I think he's just a streaky hitter. If he was healthy, I would expect him to have a crazy ass month that like got him back over to and end up the season at 250 with 28 homers, and I still think he'll get to a lot of his numbers. Now minus a month, I guess.
I was looking to see. I've seen a couple of points this year where Jazz has been burned by close calls, and I was like, I wonder if he's been near the league lead in pitches outside the zone that have been called strikes, like the opposite of what we were describing yesterday, right? Strike zone is shrinking, but sometimes players get burned on calls more often than others, and he's not at the top of the list. I think he's got 10, and the league leader's got 16. There's 3 guys at the top. Jung-Ho Lee, Lamont Wade Jr., and Geraldo Perdomo are all the league leaders there. Soto with 14, James Wood with 14.
Wade is really interesting because he doesn't swing. And I do notice that like umpires, at least in Little League, are like, oh, you're one of these guys who's up here to walk. And they get a tougher zone, I think, sometimes. I don't know how you'd study that in the major leagues, but it seems possible. You just look at all the lowest swingers and see if they're getting if they get squeezed. But there are these biases because they're human beings. We have established that umpires in the past have shown bias by race, by ethnicity, by star level, So Jazz sits at a crux of a couple of those, and maybe the way he acts, earns him some bias or not. I love him as a player. Watching him, I don't think I've had very few shares in the history of my playing fantasy baseball. I may have had 1 or 2 shares of Jazz Chisholm in the last 5 years.
Yeah, and the injury history is a big part of what scares people away. It's been a lot of different ailments over the course of his career. Hopefully this one ends up being more like a 3 to 4 week thing as opposed to something longer for Jazz. I did see Jorby Vivas is back up for the Yankees, having a nice start at AAA this year. I don't know if he's going to play a ton. If they were going to platoon with Vivas and Pablo Reyes in Jazz's place, then it could be a temporary big side platoon role, but they also have Oswaldo Cabrera, Oswald Parra. They got other guys they can throw into that mix. So the Vivas nice start at AAA may just make him sort of an extra bench guy in this window. But I'm curious. I want to see if he gets a little bit of a chance. Some other news to pass along somewhat quickly here. Zach Gelof is actually starting a rehab assignment. You mentioned him a little bit earlier in the show, kind of a forgotten guy, and especially because the A's lineup has put runs on the board pretty consistently, and Gelof's coming off of a disappointing and an injury-impacted sophomore campaign. Had power, had speed, but had the K rate soar up to 34.4%, despite the fact O-swing comes up again. His O-swing was almost identical to what it was when he debuted and was really effective throughout the second half of 2023. So it's a little bit of a strange twist there. But I am curious, what was your overall assessment of Gelof coming off of the down year? Was he a middle infielder you liked despite the flaws? I think baseline expectations are low average with power and speed. But if things click for him again, he could actually be a 5-category player in a rapidly improving lineup.
Yeah, I enjoy talking to him, and I know he's a rooker right, and I kind of some of the soft skills I thought could lead to a breakout. So I do have a couple shares because he was so cheap also going into the season. I thought he was, and if you just looked at just his projections and just had a sober look at his projections, he was going to be an above the fold player, above replacement. Like he was going to be a player of value that was going pretty late. And so I did try to take him as like an MI or a bench, a third MI in a couple places. I think I've dropped them since. So maybe I'll see if they're on the wire. I do still think power and speed is there. I did want to test something. I have now sorted the major leagues this year by swing strike rate, and I'm going to name to you the players with above a 14% swing strike rate that I would be sad I didn't own. Brent Rooker, Julio Rodriguez, Bryce Harper, Rafael Devers, Austin Riley, maybe Trevor Story, Corbin Carroll. I have some shares of Dansby Swanson. I think he'll turn it around and be fine. Christian Walker's right there, Jazz. I would say, of the 28 players that have a 14% swing strike rate, I have a bunch of shares of these guys. I have a bunch of Kostowers, but would I be sad if I just made a rule that I don't draft a guy that has more than a 14% swing strike? How many of these guys would be actually sad that I cut out of my life? I'd say like maybe 5 of the 28, maybe 6.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think it's interesting too that Trevor Story's name came up in that group, because I think that might be a realistic comp for Zach Gelof for his career. I mean, I think if again, remember
Coors, but actually maybe the new space is like Coursian.
It's close. And I think the flaws we saw from Story early in his career, there was some swing and miss, but it was power, it was speed that he was getting to consistently. And had he not been playing half his games in Coors, I think he would have been more of a questionable source of batting average for a lot of those peak years. How he would have aged without injuries is we'll never know sort of question beyond whatever happens in this next couple seasons.
But also Story was hitting balls harder than Gelof has so far. If you look at max EV and barrel rates and stuff. So Gelof is a little bit of a test case for, I think, something that Jed Lowry's been talking about, sort of functional power, or guys that get to their power more often, or get a good swing off or make good contact, and maybe don't have the elite bat speed, but get to what they have more often. And that's something that I had a conversation with Gelof, when he first got there, and he said that's a goal of his. I don't have to hit the ball 120 to get out of the park, but we also know that if you can't hit the ball 120, it changes all of your potential outcomes. It changes your ceiling. So I'm always interested in where Gelof's power is going to end up. If it's more the 151 ISO he threw in 2024, or more the 237 he showed in his debut, because there's a bit of a gulf of value there. That's a difference between a guy who's going to hit you 20-ish homers and a guy who can hit you 30 homers.
Yeah, makes a pretty big difference if you can get to the higher end of that power range outcome. Some other quick odds and ends. Shohei Ohtani has resumed a regular throwing schedule twice per week. That was paused briefly after his stint on the paternity list in April. Darvish, likely still several weeks away from his debut, probably a late May return. This according to AJ Cassavell of MLB.com.
It's not a terrible time to stash him, though. I mean, you have to hold him 3 weeks.
Well, yeah, and there's gonna be
every week you don't stash him.
It's more expensive.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
it gets on the radar for everybody. There's one we're going to talk about in a couple minutes that I think we're also entering the sweet spot for, and he's a little bit forgotten about somehow, even though he's probably a future Hall of Famer. Walker Buehler is back in Boston for further tests. He's dealing with some shoulder soreness. Their Saturday start, TBD, at least at the time of this recording. Sean Newcomb might make some sense for that. I noticed he threw 97 pitches back on April 23rd, then moved into the bullpen for one relief appearance on April 27th, only threw 16 pitches that day. He'd have plenty of rest, could probably give them like a regular starter's workload or close to it on Saturday if they want to go that route.
Giolito came back into that rotation, and there are some good signs in that the changeup is there. The command was not bad. The bad signs are that he does not back to the fastball he had. His fastball is better than it was in 2022 and 23, but it's not back to kind of a vintage Giolito fastball. And neither are his breaking balls. So I have a comp for you on Giolito that may upset you.
Okay. I have low expectations initially. So
Chris Paddock?
Well, yeah. I mean, any mention of Chris Paddock gets me upset.
Yeah,
because it's just forcing this belief that there's still more ceiling there than there really is, which, in fairness.
But also fastball changeup guy that doesn't have great breaking balls, that has had homer issues, good command, but not the greatest fastball velo, I think there's some similarities there. I don't see a reason to necessarily quibble with the 4.6, 4.5 ERA projections for Giolito, even if it will come with maybe okay strikeouts.
Yeah, I think for deep leagues, maybe useful, but you got to be a little careful with those matchups. That's probably similar to how we would describe Paddock. Although I will point out, Chris Paddock, the park's not a soft landing spot. With Paddock, had the bad start against the White Sox his first time out. Right?
He's usable now, dude. That's why I brought him up.
4 straight starts where he's gone 5 innings. He's given up a combined 5 earned runs across all of those outings. And basically, you just chop off that first bad start against the White Sox on the road in March. You'd have a guy that has a 3 ERA over 24 innings, only 20 Ks, so a little light in that department, and a 129 whip. I think, useful back end guy is as much praise as I can throw at Chris Paddock. He just bothers me because I want Festa and Zebby Matthews in the rotation. Yeah. That is what I want. That's the reason why Chris Paddock irks me.
Yeah. Logan Evans was a guy that someone in his organization sort of pulled me aside and was like, this guy's a dude. And when he first came up, his first start, he didn't really show the strikeouts. But I think the sweeper is really good. The fastball mix, at least the cutter and the sinker, threaten average. So it is a guy that, could have a elite breaking ball mix and just enough fastball to make it all work. There are plenty of comps. They escape my head right now. But this is a type of package that can work in the big leagues. I think the walk rate will come down. Even as a prospects guy, he had a 50-55 present future from Fangraphs on command. And walk rates in the minors are great. So I think the walk rate will come down. Maybe he settles in at 18-19% strikeouts. And because he has these great breaking balls, I would actually reduce the home run projection that a lot of these places have and give him sort of like a 4.2 ERA guy. And it's some runway with the different injuries that they're feeling in Seattle.
Right. So for the guy that just said that Paddock and Giolito are back end guys you have to be careful with, the difference here is that you can probably just use Logan Evans for most of his home starts and not worry about that, and then occasionally spot him in for the road matchups. And I think the way the team's built right now, Logan Gilbert working his way back from what they said was a grade 1 flexor strain in his pitching arm. That is certainly a good outcome, good diagnosis, plus George Kirby trying to get back before the end of May. It may only be a handful of starts before Logan Evans gets bumped out again, but I think what Logan Evans is doing right now is he's putting himself ahead of Emerson Hancock on the depth chart. So as spots become less available in Seattle, I think the priority is going to be using Evans for those turns as opposed to Emerson Hancock.
We had some question in the Discord about Gunnar Hoagland Stuff Plus. Are we interested in this Athletics call up? I think Michelle Lockhart broke the news that he was coming up. He was a first round pick for the Blue Jays that came over in the Chapman deal. Is that the right deal?
That would be the Matt Chapman trade, I believe. Yes. Because he was the 19th overall pick of the Jays in 2021.
And I have to say that the Stuff Plus is not exciting because, again, this is scaled to minor leaguers, and his best is the changeup and curve at 103 Stuff Plus, and everything else is below. So I am expecting below average Stuff Plus, possibly even poor Stuff Plus in the major leagues. And you look at his strikeout rates in the minor leagues, not very good. So I would have to say I'm not very excited about this call-up.
I'm probably slightly more excited because he could actually stick, but it's still more of a deep league sort of play. I think in
the corresponding move.
Who did they boot? Yeah, who's gone? Who did they kick out? Severino Springs, Sears, Bideau. JT Ginn is on the IL.
It's Ginn.
I guess that was the move. Yeah, and the related question people are asking is why not use Mitch Spence instead?
I would ask that question because Spence has been pretty good in the bullpen, and he was pretty good last year, and they seem to have made some sort of decision on Mitch Spence. I don't get it.
Not that you're wrong at all, but they also need relievers. Like they do need good bullpen arms.
Other than Mason Miller.
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe part of the thinking is, well, we do like Mitch Spence, but maybe he's a better fit
is where
in
we
this
need
role.
him. Yeah.
Because we are actually trying to win and find the postseason. Other names that I thought were kind of interesting. Noah Cameron pitched well in a spot start for the Royals. He's back down in the minors. And I think that's probably what's going to happen with Blade Tidwell, who you mentioned earlier. We'll see him get a look from the Mets this weekend and then probably get sent right back down to AAA. That's more of like a stash question beyond like a first come, first serve, pick him up and stream him sort of usage. Who would you rather have stashed away in a deeper league where starters might be at a premium? Would you rather have Cameron or would you rather have Tidwell?
I think Tidwell. I know that their minor league stats look very different this in terms of results. Blake Tidwell is running a 5 ERA in AAA. I just like the per pitch numbers better. Tidwell has more velo. He has more dominant sweeper, and the sweeper sinker against righties, fastball, changeup, gyro against lefties package is out there and has had some proven success. Now I don't know where he is on the continuum, but I'm more interested in that.
Couple of guys getting back from injuries.
The park is good. Don't ever forget the park. It just makes it easier to use him.
Park's huge there, but you also have like veterans coming back. Lance McCullers nearing a return. Clayton Kershaw is actually getting close. He's the guy that is also in the Yu Darvish bucket of, hey, we're probably a few weeks away, but Kershaw went 5 in a rehab start recently. Wow. He was a 60-day IL guy as well, so he's still a few weeks away from being eligible to return. But
did you see anything about velo?
I did not see velo right away, but based on the pitcher we've seen
it doesn't always matter.
The last 3 years, I mean, the blind gamble here is that there's still something in the tank worth chasing, right? And I don't know if you're going to do it. It's cheaper to do it now than to wait until he's all the way back.
That's true.
Is there a world in which you could see him being like a usable, even in 12-team league starter still?
Yeah. I want him to be like 90 plus, but in 2022 and 2023, which is not that long ago, he averaged 91 on the fastball, and he put together 260 innings of a 2.5 ERA, 2.4 ERA. So don't forget that.
Yeah, not that far in the rearview mirror.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Almost doesn't matter what his stuff plus is. I do care a little bit about the fastball. Like if he's 87, I don't know.
One other thing to get to here before we go, we'll save some mailbag questions for Monday. Shelby Miller's path to get saves opened up a lot because in the time since we last spoke about Shelby Miller, Justin Martinez lost velo and then landed on the IL with what they're calling right shoulder inflammation. And given the massive velocity drop before the IL stint, and given that the news on AJ Puck also got worse, I'm curious what kind of bids you're throwing in the direction of Shelby Miller in leagues where you're in need of saves. I did have a Thursday night league, which uses a $100 budget, where the winning bid was 14% of a full budget. I imagine in redraft situations, if you're in the NFBC main event, you may have to go even higher than that. But I do think for the broader range of leagues, that's probably about right if you're really content on trying to come away with Shelby Miller as a source of saves.
Oh, man. If I had somebody else in that bullpen that I could circle and say, don't take him because he has below average stuff, and he's 34 and he's not necessarily projected to be that much of an asset in the bullpen. It's like a 4-ish ERA with a 23% strikeout rate. It's like I don't want to pay $140 for this closer, but I have to. I'm not hedging here. I'm just telling you this is a bad bullpen on a good team. And so I would assume that he's the closer at least until August 1st. I don't see somebody else. Ginkel is fine, but Ginkel also has below average stuff and also has a kind of mid threes, 24 to 25% strikeout rate projection. So I guess the only thing I would say is if you want to put $1 on Ginkel and $10 out of 100 on Shelby, I'd rather do that than pay like $20 out of 100 for Shelby Miller. Like, all right, so that doesn't seem to move.
You're going to be somewhat cautious with Shelby Miller, which is totally understandable for the reasons you mentioned. And Ryan Thompson pops in the model, but doesn't miss a lot of bats. So I don't think that's going to be his function.
They don't like that slot for closing because it has a huge platoon split usually.
And usually you can use Ryan Thompson to get out of jams. I mean, right? Yeah, 61% ground ball rates each of the last 2 seasons. Like you're picking your spot with him and not using him in the 9th inning.
Like Tyler Rogers-y. It's not exactly Tyler Rogers-y, but Tyler Rogers has never really been this closer for the Giants.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Zach Agnes getting saved for the Rockies if you're looking for a less expensive option. And the bid on Agnes was 7% in that same league where Miller went for 14%. So maybe that will guide you just a little bit. I mentioned up top, not as many interesting bats out there right now. I'm looking at Zach DeZenzo maybe as a guy in deeper leagues that's playing a little bit more again for the Astros. He's kind of intriguing. Eli White's playing a lot in Atlanta. I wouldn't spend a lot of money on him. I think the name that I'm most intrigued by is actually Angel Martinez, a long time deep league follow for me. We know the Guardians with so many.
Is he the last man standing in center field?
Maybe, and he was hurt last year, and I think that may have had an impact on some of the quality of contact. So he's still pretty young. He's still just 23 years old. He switch hits, just of course, because every Guardians prospect is a switch hitter, right? That's
yeah, and also makes a lot of contact. Yep, that tracks, and also doesn't hit the ball that hard. Yep.
Yeah, 36% at AAA to start the year and 35% in the little time he's been in the big leagues. Maybe for deep leagues, but I didn't see much of anything that was like an obvious pickup on the hitter side this week.
Yeah, I think we may maybe like sort of injury related. I think the other one is, Jack Caglioni's stash,
Yeah, we're at that point now.
It's kind of the last minor leaguer that could come up and really have an impact right away that I've got circled. Maybe in the Discord you can point some hour out and we'll talk about them next week.
Yeah, we'll have a chat in there, try to find a few other intriguing names as the weekend unfolds. Be sure to join the Discord with the link in the show description. You can find Eno on Bluesky, Sarris.bsky.social. I'm DVR.bsky.social. Thanks to Brian Smith for putting this episode together. That's going to do it for this episode of Rates and Barrels. We're back with you on Monday.
Thanks for listening.